Good afternoon and welcome to the MMA Webinar Series 2020 as we continue to bring to you curated and rich insights in collaboration with industry experts, marketers, and partners. I'm Monica Khurana, MMA India Country Head and your host for today. Today's session is another milestone as we as an industry body come together to announce the launch of MMA India Voice and Audio Council. The idea being to create leadership and evangelism for marketers to better understand the evolving nature of voice marketing and to build guidelines, capabilities, best practices, use cases to exploit the platform. Voice is a highly disruptive technology. Combined with artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's set to reinvent how marketers connect with consumers. Voice assistant enabled feature phones, connected devices like Alexa and Google Home in the ecosystem have further opened many avenues for brands and businesses. Consumers are spending less time looking for information on apps and websites and enjoying simplified experiences through voice assists. What once we thought was a futuristic technology is now here and will only grow bigger in time. It has absolutely changed the way we communicate, connect, consume content, and conduct commerce. And do not forget the earbud generation who's consuming music and podcasts as a form of audio entertainment and is seeing a huge rise too. Hence, audio is an integral part of evangelism for the MMA India Council. Any dominant technology trend or behavior becomes a dominant touch point for a marketer. So it would be interesting to see how marketers explore the power of voice and audio as MMA India enables the path for it. But before we start, let me quickly introduce MMA to all of you for those who are still not inducted into the MMA charters. MMA is a global not-for-profit trade body. We serve the marketer, but represent the ecosystem, be it the advertiser, be it the publisher, be it the tech enabler, or be it the marketer, to better serve the marketing community. In India, we're represented by an entire ecosystem across categories as we believe everyone has a part to play and hence everyone's participation in the trade body is essential. Our mission is to accelerate transformation and innovation of marketing through mobile, driving business growth with closer and stronger consumer engagement with the marketer as the key focus area. We enable the same through best practices, guidelines, advocacy, and through fostering know-how, business intelligence, as well as enabling inspirations to the industry. We also have several think tanks, working groups, and events and awards, which become an enabler to deliver inspiration, thought leadership, and evangelism. Keeping in mind the current times, we have a COVID hub, which is essentially meant for the marketer and is highly curated. It is a central resource which helps the marketing and tech industry stay updated. That's our way to support, be helpful, and stay relevant to the industry at this point in time. You're free to contribute as well by writing into us or by consuming the hub, which the link for which is mentioned on the slide you see in front of you. Our programs and working groups consist of executives who discuss key issues which are an industry gap or a member need, and we continuously work towards the same. Hence, MMA has also created several councils like the Creative Council, the Business Effectiveness Council, the Brand Safety Council, MarTech Council, and the Voice Council, all working in the direction of bridging industry gaps, enabling best practices, sharing evangelism. That brings us to the webinar for today. Whilst I'm absolutely excited to launch the Voice Charter with the webinar today, let me give you a quick preview of the upcoming webinars as well, where we have the Friday series, which is There Is No Playbook for This. We have a great debate, which is a global webinar series. And we have an upcoming new series, which is called the Modern Marketing Confluence, which will be a Thursday weekly series. Having said that, let's discuss some housekeeping and ground rules for today's session. Do feel free to ask as many questions as you need to by typing into the questions window, which is on your dashboard on the toolbar below. We will try and answer as many as questions as possible. However, if we run out of time, we will connect with you offline with answers to the questions you have asked. Do try and leave your name, designation, and company name along with the question for us to better contextualize our answers for you. Today, we will be touching upon the voice landscape, the voice insights, and then break into a panel discussion, which will focus on harnessing the power of voice. So let me start by introducing you to our two keynote speakers of the day. Let me first introduce the lady in the room, which is Sapna Chadda, Senior Director of Marketing at Google for both Southeast Asia and India. She's also closely working with product teams to build platforms for the next billion users. She was recently featured in Campaign Asia's APAC's 50 most influential and purposeful marketers. She is a mother of two adorable twins, and she claims that they have inspired her to take multitasking to another level. I can quite imagine that from the kind of work she's doing. So welcome, Sapna. Maybe you can say a quick hi to everybody.
Great. Thanks, Monica. Thanks for the great introduction.
My pleasure. Let me now introduce you to Shams Jasani, Managing Director, South Asia at Isobar. Let me tell you something you don't know about him. There's enough written and spoken about him. He loves spending time with his son. It's almost like a full-time hobby for him. He's totally a doting father. He can plan an alternative career as a bartender whenever he's bored of what he's doing. He makes some amazing cocktails. And he's apparently currently catching up on a book called Sapiens. So welcome, Shams. Let me hand over the session to you to walk our viewers through the landscape and the voice ecosystem. So over to you, Shams, and welcome aboard.
Thanks, Monica, and welcome everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's a very exciting time in the landscape, the ecosystem of what we call digital in India. First of all, I'd like to just tell everyone that hope everyone's safe, hope everyone's at home and keeping safe. And I think in these trying and testing times, we're all healthy, and I think that's one thing which is good. Coming to the task at hand, and I will share my screen a bit, but what this ecosystem is all about is that we are at a very exciting time and a very exciting phase of digital in India, of mobile in India. And I think it's very important for us to understand how this is going to explode over the next year or so. I believe that it's really already here. It's not something for the future. Voice as a platform is already here and being utilized, and I'll show a little bit of what's happening there. But as we go further into today's discussion, I think a very important thing for us and a very important thing ask from my side and from the MMA side is for all of you to kind of contribute to this as well. This is an ecosystem. What we are trying to do today is what happened with digital maybe 10 years back, what happened with mobile maybe 5 years back. Voice is at that cusp, and we're looking at people to contribute as a part of the council, come on to the council, contribute as tech entrepreneurs, contribute as marketers, contribute as agencies, contribute as platforms, and really see how can we build this ecosystem in India and really take it across the entire not just the marketing ecosystem but also across the business ecosystem. And I think that's really one of the key asks. And of course, as MMA, would be great if you can, as Monica already pointed out, MMA is doing some fantastic stuff. And that's another platform that we are keen to really explore with a lot of other people. So just a little bit of that, and I will just quickly share my screen and showcase to you a little bit of my thoughts in terms of where the voice ecosystem is looking at. So as Isobar, we actually came out with a playbook last year, and I think it's even more pertinent in the post-COVID world as such, in terms of how voice is going to drive a lot of consumption, a lot of interaction. And through this presentation, I'm going to bring that alive. So what's happened in voice? This is a few of the things that I'm going to cover as we go ahead in this presentation. It's the key shifts in the culture, the voice ecosystem, and the growth in India, how tech is bringing purposeful change, what does the future behold for us, and think voice, but why? So why it's not just about, it's a technology, but why do you want to use that technology? I think that's very important. So what are the key shifts in culture that are happening right now? So the past was about using technology to cater to human needs. Machines were adapting to, humans were adapting to machines, while now machines are adapting to humans. I think that's a big change. And for that, I think we have to step back, not far back, where we were being intimidated by machines and threatened for what the future holds. But I think one very important word that we use is augmented humanity. I think machines are slowly augmenting us rather than replacing us. And that's a very important thing to note. Earlier, machines were just complementing what we were doing. Now they're augmenting us as humans. They're making us better humans. They're taking out a lot of tasks which were menial, which were small tasks that were there. And now those tasks are being taken care of by AI and machine learning. And in voice, when we're talking about voice, the major platform that backs voice and the major technology that is backing voice is going to be AI and ML and conversational AI. I think that's one very important thing as we go ahead. Now, the growing adoption of voice tech will move the consumption from being individual centric to household centric. So I think that's a key differentiator. As technologies, both from a mobile perspective as well as from the gadgets that you have at home perspective, it is actually going to bring us closer together rather than individualistic as a mobile phone was doing. Very important thing that I truly believe that the ecosystem is going to change is, and I hope we can see this because the backgrounds tend to cancel this out. But the mobile phone has been seeing a drastic increase and the screen times have been going up. My belief is that because of voice, the screen time is going to go down. You are going to interact with everything around you through your voice and not necessarily through the touch interface that was there. And a very important part that I try to bring alive, and as Monica said, one of my biggest passions is my 5-year-old. I would say that a 10-year-old would have belonged to the touch generation. My son that has growing up now belongs to the voice generation. So more and more of his interactions is around the voice devices that are at home, rather than just spending a lot of times, touching his phone. His interactions are more through voice. So I think that's one key differentiator that is going to happen. What is also going to happen is that the consumer experiences are driving the integration of voice and not necessarily brands. So I think looking back in 2009, and this is the study that we did, 2/3 of the touch points were brand driven. Today, and as we look at it, 2/3 of the touch points are consumer driven. And again, a very important point as we come to the voice ecosystem. And as we see the data as we go ahead, people have already moved on to voice. It's important for us as businesses, us as marketers to be able to adapt to the challenge of people already moving to their voice. When Sapna also talks about it from a Google perspective, which is the largest player in the ecosystem as far as voice goes in India, it's just phenomenal in terms of how people are really adopting to it, and especially in Class B and C in CNT towns. I think that's very important, and that's something which we will also showcase as we go ahead. So what is the voice ecosystem? So this is a little bit of history in terms of how the evolution of voice has been across the world. So 2011 is when Siri started, 2012 is when Google Home came into being, Cortana in 2013, Amazon and Alexa in 2015, and so on and so forth. And the assistants, Google Assistant in 2016 has been, I think, one of a very key drive by Google, because now pretty much India being an Android ecosystem, Google Assistant is a key driver of voice as far as India is concerned. So this has been the voice ecosystem, and now more and more devices, more and more technologies are adopting towards the voice ecosystem that you see on this chart. So voice tech will be everywhere. It'll be all encompassing. It'll be indispensable. What I truly believe in is that it's going to go beyond just marketing. It's going to enter into everyday lives. It's going to change human interactions and how we interact with our surroundings, how when we are driving, we don't need to touch our phones. We don't need to touch the screens on our car dashboards. Everything will be voice activated. And that, for example, brings safety in for when we are driving our cars. When you are, say, cooking, for example, you have a whole lot of recipes, a whole lot of interactivity, a whole lot of ordering. And I'll showcase one example of also my passion, related to my passion of how this fits into it. Your devices are talking, your smart devices are talking to you. And I think that's another very important thing that is happening. So I think what's very important for us to note is voice is going to be all encompassing. It's going to be around us. It is going to be relative because the output can be in the form of an image. The output can be in the form of a video. The output can be in the form of an audio. It could be maps. There are so many things that you can do with voice. It's full of opportunities. As I was saying, it's so tremendous, and the I feel that the ecosystem is so powerful that it's not just about visual and voice, which is the easiest part. It's about data and analytics. Yes, there are good and bad about it, but it really understands you. And with the kind of AI and ML that is happening, it'll start understanding changes in your tonality and then give you the right kind of answers. ML is already there. It's about monetization and retail. I think a lot of retail experiences are going to be brought about by voice. A lot of skills need to be developed. So I think we are at a time in India where 5 years back we were about developing apps. Now it's about developing skills. And that's something which we need to really look at. How do we, in this new world of voice search, do SEO and paid? That's going to be very interesting. And how do we develop content for this ecosystem is going to be extremely, extremely critical. So how is the growth in India? So this is again, a study that we did, and this is a belief that we have, that 2019, the voice ecosystem, the industry, I would say, is a growing industry. It's just starting. It's about 150 crores. And when I'm talking about this, it's just from a pure marketing perspective. There is so much more when you are talking about the build perspective, from a backend perspective, from a B2B perspective. This is purely from a marketing perspective. We are at about 150 crores. We should be approximately at a 450 crores. But this is a very linear CAGR that we are talking about. I think the explosion will happen, and the explosion will be 3x or 4x of this by 2022. And this is from the research, but I truly believe that it's going to be about 3 to 4 times of this. What's happening with the how are people using it? 36% of the users use it from their home devices. 16% use an assistant, whether it's Alexa, Echo device, or a Google Home device. 54% of Indians are using at least one wearable device of the people who are using voice. So I think that's extremely essential of how voice is also going to be enabled through wearable devices. I think that's a very important thing to note. A voice tech is enabling brands to do consumers' experiences better. So how am I creating richer and better consumer experiences through voice? How is it that the cab booking experience is seamless? How am I doing e-commerce, which is seamless? What are the kind of product launches that I'm doing using voice? Food ordering, for example, and I'm quite sure that the Swiggy, Zomatos of the world are working on it, and very soon you'll be able to order all of these using your voice. You don't need to be on your phones. And there are lots and lots of examples of how you're also paying through voice. And that's something that is, I think, critical as we go ahead. Newsflash, of course, is one of the key drivers as well. So how are we using smartphones? We're using 84% is just about asking questions. Very importantly, again, bringing alive the case of my son. When I when I don't have any more answers for him, he's got about 5,000 answers a day, questions a day. When I don't have any answers for him, I say, okay, just ask Alexa or just ask Google. And that's what he does. He asks, and most of the time he gets the right kind of answers. We stream music a lot. We check weather. 80% of the people check weather, and 66% set alarms. Now, these are on devices and these are on speakers, mind you. When you talk about assistants now, what do people use for assistance? What is voice used for assistance, and how do we use voice for assistance? And mind you that this is from a ask perspective. 35% of the people are using it for entertainment, 30% for news and updates, 16% for communication. So that's what I think the breakup is. How are we using? We're using 52% on voice devices, 30% on search engines, 9% on application, and 9% on others. Voice assistants are the ones which are driving everything. And in India, the mobile ecosystem through voice assistants is the biggest driver of voice in India. I think that's one very key difference in how voice is consumed across the world and voice is consumed in India. The mobile device actually drives voice in India. Now, how are we using voice search? By 2020, I mean this year, we were slated to be 50% of all searches to be voice searches. 40% of adults now use voice search once every day. 20% of mobile queries are now on voice. So you can just see, and I'm not going to read the rest of it, but you can just see the kind of, the kind of power that voice has, the kind of explosion that voice has. As I said, people are already moving on to this platform. It's about us to understand how we are going to really take advantage of this as marketers. And now is the side of voice commerce. I think globally in India, we will see voice commerce becoming bigger and bigger and bigger as we go forward. Now we can put things in our cart, we can shop. And I think even from an OTT perspective, for example, Flipkart is doing a big thing as well on the voice platform. So I think voice is going to be a key driver towards commerce as well. The other thing that voice is going to bring is that it's going to break a very major barrier that digital still has, which is that when it reaches to the smaller towns and cities, it breaks the language and the literacy barrier. And that is a very key reason why voice will make the explosion of digital even bigger in India. So the diversity is just going to be enabled through voice. I think that's one very key thing. And as marketers, we need to be able to, get onto the bus when the bus gets there, and very soon it'll get there. So voice tech is going to bring in a powerful and a purposeful change. Voice tech is a crusader of change, solving human problems. As I said, the first thing is that it's going to decrease screen time. I think a lot of people and a lot of me as a parent also, one of the things that we keep on talking about is how do we decrease screen time for our kids. And this is going to be extremely important. Voice as a platform is also going to bring in so much interactivity that you're going to the experience that is going to create and the kind of platforms that it's going to create is going to help a lot of ecosystems, particularly, for example, in the health ecosystem. And for example, we've got one case study on the voice petition that we did for the malaria movement. So these are the kind of things that we can use voice for as far as humanity goes. How can we better humanity using the voice as a platform as well? So what does the future hold for us? It's increasingly, voice will change from how we think voice will be and think of voice as a robot on the other end to a very human sounding voice at the other, which will hold a conversation with you as if it was a normal human at the end of the day. And I think Sapna and Google is doing a tremendous job in bringing this alive, conversational AI alive, where you hardly feel that it's AI at the other end. It's so real. And I think that just brings alive so many possibilities and humanizing the whole element of voice. We are going to have more specific devices catering to different categories, different platforms, to kids, to adults, to different kind of categories. So I think that's a very important step as we go ahead, and hence the content is going to be curated for those platforms as well. Voice notifications, of course, that's a given. There's going to be intense competition, and every big tech company is going to jump onto this. And I think they already have a way forward in terms of creating this ecosystem. And I think it's an extremely exciting time as we step into a very new territory. And I think today, as we step into it, I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about the journey we are all taking together. And I'm inviting you guys on this journey. And today we have a great panel. We've got Sapna, and then followed by a great panel to really take home this. And as the industry the biggest player in the industry, I think Google is doing some fantastic work there. But before we go, I'll show one quick video, and then I'll hand it over to Sapna to take this forward. This video was developed. This little video was developed by our counterparts in the Netherlands for Johnny Walker, and this is taking the voice ecosystem. It also marries, as Monica said, my favorite and one of my passions with voice, which is my other passion. So I'll quickly jump to that. So you've got about.
The popularity of cocktails is rising. However, home consumption remains low. That's why Diageo created a cocktail skill on Amazon Alexa, so you can work on yours. From now on, just say, Alexa, open the bar.
Welcome to the bar.
With over 75 recipes, it can find you the perfect cocktail and tell you how to make it. Let's start with a classic.
Old fashioned coming right up. Start with the sugar. Add ice. Pour in the whiskey. Stir patiently. Garnish with the orange zest. Cheers.
The bar gives personal cocktail advice to suit your taste.
Would you like something sweet or sour?
Sweet.
I got a great recipe for an espresso martini. This is how 007 would drink his coffee.
The bar is enabled with commerce functionality, so you can get ingredients delivered at home. Just say the word. Just mix, shake, twist, strain, peel, flame, and serve. Boom. Look at you, Mr. Bartender. Your home is now a bar, and it's open. Alexa, I feel like a woo-woo.
I got a great recipe for a woo-woo. It is a 70s disco-inspired drink that is sweet and fruity. That's the way. You'll like it.
So that's it from me. I'll hand it over to Sapna now. And I think, as I said, the voice ecosystem is such a force that it's really going to take over a lot of things around us. It's going to be a force which will really push things and really it's one of the driving forces of transition as we go. And I think it's very important. And I just end with saying, then may the force be with you. Thank you.
Great, thanks Shams, and thanks for that great introduction. When Shams and I met earlier this year, we found a common interest, which is our passion for voice, which is clearly, it's clear from your presentation how passionate you are. And I'm super excited to be here with everybody as well today. I'm equally passionate about voice as a topic and how it's changing how we interact with technology. Over the last couple of years, something really interesting has happened, which is that millions and millions of people have begun having conversations with computers, with their phones, with speakers. And voice technology is fundamentally changing the way we use our devices, often in ways that we didn't expect, as Shams mentioned. I'm going to spend some time today sharing some of our insights as Google on voice, and on one of our products in particular, which Shams had alluded to, which is the Google Assistant. The Google Assistant is an artificial intelligence-powered virtual assistant that's available primarily on mobile, but across all smart home devices. And it can engage in a two-way conversation. I think that's what's really different about how voice has evolved in recent years, is that a two-way conversation is now enabled, which is unlike anything we've seen before. And so let me start by first asking this group through a poll. Let me ask you a question, and so the poll will probably just come up. And the question is, how big do you think that Hindi is as a language on the Google Assistant globally? And what this means is, out of all the languages in the world, how would you believe that Hindi is ranked out of all languages in the world? Is it number 3? Is it number 5? Is it number 2? Just take a second for folks to get their answers in. Okay. Well, that's really good news. This is a smart group as we have here today. So second biggest language got the most votes. And that is, in fact, that's the answer. So Hindi is the second biggest language globally on Google Assistant after English. And as I've traveled around India and spent time across user segments, a distinguishing factor is the usage of voice to access the internet today. And when we launched the Google Assistant less than 3 years back in 2017, we've seen unprecedented growth in India. In fact, India is one of the biggest markets for voice and the Google Assistant globally. And though every time I share this, I see that eyebrows are continually raised whenever I share this point that India is one of the fastest and that Hindi is one of the biggest languages. To be honest, I'm not surprised at all, as we have seen this trend for some time already. This is not just a digital assistant phenomenon. Actually, voice has emerged as a preferred mode for input across other products as well. If you look at search or you look at YouTube, we've seen consistent usage of voice as an input method. We're actually seeing almost 3 times year-on-year growth for search voice queries in India. And we see people searching for their content on YouTube using voice, searching for any of their questions using voice. And so this isn't a new trend. It's just picking up speed faster than ever before. And so let's talk about why. The key drivers of voice adoption, there's 3 of them. One is the ability to solve a core user need, and there has to be an inherent user need to adopt voice. 2, the ability to access voice easily. And 3, how is the ecosystem enabling things? And I'm excited particularly today about the discussion that will happen during the panel on the ecosystem, because I think we're at a critical juncture around how more than just the big tech companies are looking at this, but how we all work accordingly to solve for this user need. Because from a Google lens, what we see is that consumers are adopting voice because it solves a real need for them. Not that they think it's cool, not that it's tech forward, or that those that are digitally savvy are using it, but there are some challenges that they have that voice actually solves for. And when we can build consistent experiences around this, and when we can ensure ease of use, when we connect the dots between products and user journeys, we can see a whole leapfrogging on this. And so that's what we're going to be discussing today, is how does the ecosystem lean in more on this? And we'd love to get more participation on the voice charter for the MMA from those of you who are listening today, and would love to hear your inputs on this. So coming back to the first piece, which is why are Indians adopting voice? They've taken like no other country in the world. They've leapfrogged desktop. Indians have leapfrogged desktop and adopted mobile. We've seen that already. But now what we're going to see is that there's going to be a leapfrogging of moving away from typing and reading to using voice. And we're pretty confident that this is going to happen. And why? Let's discuss. One of the most exciting things to witness about digital assistants is that even though Assistant is a new technology, it's incredibly easy to adopt. There's no user manual. People of all ages can actually start right away. And we see across geographies, across sectors, across, as Shams mentioned, tier 1, tier 2, all cities and towns, we see this because we're finding that users defy the early adopter stereotype here. There's a huge uptick in how new internet users are adopting voice technology. And it's because India is a mobile first country. Shams alluded to this, right? So we see the majority of our use is on mobile because, India has the largest amount of mobile devices. And because of this ease that we see, as Indians, we are comfortable with voice. We are receptive to it. We're adopting the latest technologies. We're also comfortable talking to the phone to get things done. Actually, around the world, the comfort and ease of having a conversation with a device is not as high as it is in India. And I think this is very important, very compelling. And we see people asking, hundreds of millions of cricket queries to their phones because of this comfort that they have. But let's face it, when it comes down to the core user need, voice is faster than typing. It is 3 times faster than typing, especially for multilingual users in India and those that are inputting on Indic keyboards. Voice is enabling what is usually difficult. Actually, you can argue that voice is like a form of jugaad. It's a great hack for users as they're adopting new technologies and getting onto the internet for the first time. So our vision for Google is to make things more naturally conversational and to have things be visually assistive, but also to have this two-way conversation. All of this is possible due to machine learning and the AI engine behind it. And specifically, conversational AI is only possible today because of the power of machine learning. You should be able to have a real conversation, just like you would with another real person. And you should be able to continue a conversation without having to stop or break how you would have a normal dialogue. In the Google parlance, we don't want people to have to always say, okay, Google, and ask their question. We want it to be conversational and for it to flow. There should be context that the assistant understands, and so that you don't have to always go back to square one. When people start using voice assistants, we usually see very simple commands, but very quickly expectations go up and dialogue can become more complex. So we might see weather in Kanpur typed in a search. But when somebody is having a conversation with the Google Assistant, they'll ask it a question like they would ask a real person. What's the weather today in Kanpur this afternoon? On average, assistant queries are 200 times more conversational than search. And we've seen that this takes all sorts of forms and of commands and dialogues. There's 5,000 ways that somebody can set an alarm using conversation. It's not always just, prescriptive in terms of how somebody would enter that. And so the conversational aspect of the assistant is what's most complex, but it's what's most exciting in that the power of machine learning is allowing us to get this right. And that's what we're excited about today. But if you think about language and the conversation, this isn't really about English users. I started with Hindi at the beginning of the presentation. We're seeing vernacular users are adopting voice more than anybody would expect. Actually, 70% of current internet users in India prefer vernacular language when they're having a conversation. For them, voice is way easier than typing. So again, this isn't about being tech savvy and using voice. Indic keyboards and using language on keyboards is complex. And so when you think about the Indian context and the environment and how alphabet and the characters are more complicated. English has 26 letters, Hindi has 50. That makes it harder to type. And so therefore, because of the complexity and the input challenges, we're seeing that this is going to propel a new normal for us. And this means that this isn't nice to have. If you ask me, moving towards voice it's not nice to have for us to get right. We need to think about how we believe this is a mandatory to enable users across India to be able to access the internet in an easier way. So, and I'll go to the next page, which talks about the use cases. I think Shams mentioned a lot of these, so I won't talk about this for too long, but everything from basic information to actually doing things on their device. We see that a lot of actions are taking place where people are asking their device to do things for them. It's beyond questions. Now we're in a world where people can ask questions, they can have a conversation, and they can even ask fun queries. Interestingly, we have a lot of people asking the Google Assistant to marry them on a daily basis. We've received over 4.5 lakh marriage proposals on the Google Assistant. And so people are also having fun with this, which is exciting for us to see. So this is just getting started. As more and more Indians are getting online, buying their first smartphones, or getting on 4G or 5G, they will use voice more across the board. And not only new internet users, existing users will adopt it in their home. we will see people do things unlike we've seen before, because it's available across surfaces, which is something that Shams mentioned. It's available across the board. And this is something that we talk about a lot at Google, which is ubiquitous computing. You should be able to interact with your devices using your voice and across surfaces. This is what's going to be very different as we go into the next phase of computing. It's not singular device, it's across surfaces. And how do we have an experience that actually crosses surfaces for users proactively? The ubiquity of voice is what makes things so powerful. And whether you're in the home or you're on the go, we believe that this should be seamless across the board. And we've seen users resorting to voice across our products, across their mobile products, so across apps within their phone, but also apart from mobile, we've seen that mobile is the biggest platform for voice usage, but we're seeing a range of smart devices, smart TVs, smart speakers, wearables across the board. And we're seeing brands lean into using this because it's important, again, from a ubiquitous computing standpoint. But it's not just high tech. I think, the thing that makes me get up out of bed every day is really creating purpose. And voice has made technology more accessible and equitable. What we see is that for the newly connected, geophone users, it's 100 million of them, the access to an assistant to use their voice to actually to use a feature phone, which we all know is very hard. It's very hard to use a feature phone and to input things. Actually, assistance and voice can transform the experience of a feature phone user. And even for those that might not have access to the internet, we've launched something called Phone Line earlier last year, and people can use the power of their voice by calling a number and ask questions or ask Google to do anything for them. And this is a platform that can change the equity of computing and really change how we look at the digital divide. And so voice will play a role across the board. And we're seeing the ecosystem building around this. And that's, I think before we get into the panel, this is what I'm very excited about, is that because when the ecosystem starts to take place, we now have users using it, we're seeing that adoption, we're seeing scale as possible. But now the ecosystem will play a very, very important point in this next inflection point, as was mentioned. And we have tremendous adoption, but the ecosystem will play an important role. For voice to have a transformational impact, it's going to require that tech agencies, brands, and users all work together to create the ecosystem and to keep the pace of user adoption. Developers and agencies have really warmed to voice, with several of them building with voice-first solutions. Now, I'm excited today that we have Agreya Tech to join us, and Sri Raman is going to talk to you about his experiences, because they're leading with voice. It's not an afterthought. Voice and leading with voice-first solutions is going to become even more critical. And we've seen that voice can solve very critical daily user needs, like finding the right mahurat, or staying safe from misinformation, or starting your day with an inspiring note from Sadhguru. All of this can be enabled through voice. And there are many, many things that we're seeing that people are building and building on top of the Google Assistant. Today, we have more than 1 million actions available on the Google Assistant because of the great work of a number of partners across spaces, whether it's health, whether it's cricket and sports or news. We're seeing some really interesting use cases being developed, which we're excited about. But ultimately, as marketers, I'm a marketer, we need to make voice part of the core user experience, and brands will have a huge opportunity to not just be more helpful to existing users, but to unlock a new set of solutions. And I think when I look across the brand ecosystem today, and I see what great work, the brands here on this page are doing, from banking to booking cabs, to playing music, to shopping. We have seen brands across categories are really thinking about how voice will play a role in this. And these brands are starting to see really great traction. Ghana introduced voice within their app in 2018. They've seen almost a quarter of their users use their feature monthly within a year of launch. And that's how powerful things can be, is that to see a quarter of a user base adopt and move to using voice. I don't think we've seen this kind of level of adoption ever before. And the willingness for users to talk to brands is really insurmountable as an opportunity for us. India has become the third biggest startup ecosystem in the world. And we are seeing a plethora of deep tech startups focusing on AI, ML, and we're seeing AR, VR emerging across the board. And we're seeing B2B and B2C brands now looking at how they can build for voice and build voice solutions. B2B startups are building voice-based products to automate call centers. We're seeing efficiencies in businesses because of this, because of the conversational aspect and the ability to drive automation of products and services. This will be a really incredible moment in terms of automation and driving cost efficiency. On the consumer side, we see startups are focused on solving key user problems, like building resumes for blue-collar jobs. Theo started with the idea on actions on Google platform of this ability to help people that are and job seekers in this space. And since then they've started on the Google Assistant, but they've built their own app because it can be scaled in a way that they've seen for them to develop even more bespoke solutions using their own app. And so whether it's Vocal or Theo or others, we're seeing some really creative solutions in terms of using voice and enabling users that might not have been able to do some of these tasks before to be able to take advantage of automation, computing, and really change their lives. To sum everything up, I hope you got a flavor of how there's a user need, which has been profound. There's a scale that we're now seeing, which is profound. And we also see that the ecosystem is playing a really big role in this. So I won't take any more time because I want to make sure that we have the panelists have the opportunity to share their examples and to share what they're doing, which I think is great. But I just have one more question in terms of a poll. I'd love to get a sense from the attendees that have listened to both Shams and I now on whether you think this is relevant for you, for your brand, for your platform, for your app, whatever business that you may be in. Do you think that voice will be relevant for you and your platforms and your journey? Just take a few seconds to get the responses. Okay, well, 87% of you believe it's so which is great. And I'm excited to hand it over to Monica, who will lead the panel, an esteemed group of colleagues on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapna. That was really some good piece of insights and information. And what I did definitely take away as the mother of a line is this is a jugaad to get more people onto the internet. And it is a jugaad which bypasses every other jugaad which has probably happened on the internet. And that's how probably one is projecting 1 billion users coming onto the internet through voice as a platform. And that's fantastic. I'm sure we'll hear more about, such insights from you as we kind of conduct more such sessions. Fantastic having you. Thank you so much. So let me bring on the panel. And let me quickly introduce each of them to you so that we can have it started. So we have Arvind, who's Director of Marketing and Communications, McDonald's India. He has 2 decades of experience in sales and marketing in various categories like QSR, skincare, fashion, and automobiles. He's a passionate marketer and an avid reader. Welcome, Arvind. Nice to have you on the panel.
Thank you, Monica. Thanks for having me.
We have Rudra, who's VP Times Internet. He has avid interest in farming and politics, loves pets, and interestingly, and Sapna should hear this, he has a pet who's called Google. So that's interesting. We have Shri. Well, he's Shri Raman, but I guess we all call him Shri. He's the CEO of Agraha Technology, and he's very efficiently answered a lot of questions for us in the panel, which absolutely helps. So big thank you for that. It'll save us a lot of time. Agraha is India's first voice agency, like Sapna touched upon it. And he also runs Avaz.com, which is the largest podcast and spoken word platform in Indian languages. He does mentor Google startups and loves going for photo walks. We should accompany you for one. It should be interesting. Last but not the least, we have Gopal Kumar, who is the moderator for the session. He's the COO of Isobar India. He indulges in writing and is a heavy consumer of podcasts, which is not surprising. And his mantra is being better every day. So welcome, Gopa, and I'm going to hand it over to you as a moderator for the session. Let's get right into the session and quiz the panelists on harnessing the potential and power of the voice.
Thank you, Monica. Good evening, everyone. The opening session by Sapna and Shams has set a right tone for this discussion. We have a great panel this evening to throw some light how we can actually build on voice or build for voice. Just to emphasize again, I think voice ecosystem in India is set to grow rapidly, underscoring a dire need for brands and to understand how the audience interact and perceive this technology. From a voice assistant enabled mobile phones to smart assistant or connected devices like Alexa and Google Home, the ecosystem is taking a very good turn and an encouraging turn and opening much more possibilities for brands and businesses to explore. So with this, I will lead to the opening question directly to, and Arvind, if you could just take this question first. What do you think how voice scenario in India is shaping up and how you're using this in your part of the business?
So clearly, voice is a transformational strategy. As important as marketers think about digital strategy, voice strategy is right up there in terms of the importance it needs to be given. I think the great thing about voice is that for brands like McDonald's, it makes it truly democratic in terms of access, consumer access goes, and you could probably scale in terms of access with voice much more than the traditional digital tactics. So there are two big roles on what voice can do in the current stream of things. First is in terms of helping consumers access information more easily, and I think voice has a big role to play. The second is, of course, in voice commerce, right? So building voice into our delivery engines, for example, McDelivery is a very important, I would say, delivery ecosystem for us, where we kind of aggressively grow food delivery through McDelivery. So integrating voice on McDelivery, making it easier for consumers to access their favorite products and order them. I think these are two ways in which voice can play a critical role, in the business processes. But I think more important than treating voice in a very tactical fashion, I think it's important for marketers to reflect on what needs to be changed in terms of typical business processes, so that voice is better integrated into the consumer flows, into the business flows, rather than treat voice as a tactical measure.
Thank you, Arvind. Sri, so while we have heard the marketer's voice in this, basically, if you're looking at from an agency perspective or from how you are actually interacting with different brands, if you could just throw light in terms of how this voice scenario is shaping up in the country and how you are using this actually.
Right. Thanks, Gopa. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sapna. Thanks, Shams. Thanks, MMA. Gopa, we have a very, very simple framework that we work with brands. The first step, we call it as the information. What we say is brands can start with what they already have. Let's say if you're a bank, all the publicly available information, like what is your fixed deposit rates to branches to branch timing, all of this can be simply made available, right? So if I take Arvind's case, all the menu, product, all the SKUs, all of it available can be ported into a voice first environment. So when somebody asks, how much does a large fries cost? You simply have the answer there, right? So this is the information phase. Next, we call as the service, especially relevant during the COVID times. Call centers are busy, physical branches are shut down. how can you empower your customers for self-serve? Once again, talking about a bank, if you want to know your whether you're you want to do a stop a check or you want to check your account balance, this requires some amount of technical integration that your bank account is linked to a Google Assistant or an Alexa, but you are able to empower your customers with self-serve. They can get things done on their own without calling a call center or walking into a branch. Now, once again, for food ordering, you can do this. They can order a food, track it, cancel it, modify the order, so on and so forth. And final piece is what we call as delight, where if you're a CPG brand, you're not going to order a pack of salt or toothpaste in a voice assistant, but you can help people with the benefits or features of your product, like Tide stain remover is a simple use case. Or if you are a salt brand, let's say, you can do a lot associated with IQ and quiz. You can engage your consumers, or you can create podcast, audio content, music playlist for liquor brands, whatnot, right? So this is essentially the framework. We tell them, please start with what you have: information, self-serve customer, the service piece, and then delight them. So that's the framework that we advise, and that's usually brands fall into one of these places.
Great, Steve. Rudra, again, from a publisher and Times Internet, I think has been a innovator in that sense, in terms of, again, as Sapna said, 2018 Ghana integrated voice in their app. How you look at voice scenario in India, and what all you're doing in your part of the business?
Yeah, thanks, Boba. I think thanks, Sapna, and everyone for the wonderful insights on that. I think the way I look at it is that new digital decade is beyond the text and tap. Like, India is interacting with voice and also loves listening. And like Sapna mentioned, their voice searches are growing 270% year on year. That explains the market opportunity and the demand that we have. Like on Ghana, when we implemented this voice search, like today, like 24% of the users on voice on the Ghana app to play their music, clearly like indicating the impact of the voice on the music brand, right? And we have seen the same thing on the OTT platforms as well. And like on the interaction, like if I look at the voice, right, I break that into like a search, interaction, and the podcast. Like on the interaction, say, like like Ghana Antakshari, it's a new innovation project. We just went ahead and did it, and I'm sure she'll talk more about on that. But we have seen the day we launched, like now if you look at it, there's a 10x growth in the users engagement there. And also I can say, in the experience wise, this is one of the largest emoji till date. And that's clearly indicating that how Indians love to interact with the voice. Right. And the same thing we have seen the engagement on the podcast, like where on the normal news side also, like for example, Times of India, we have seen more than 2 million times the audio actually played, the podcast has been played with 95% play rate. I mean, that's actually that tells us the volume of the content and the user intent to know about it. And the interesting fact is, like during COVID, we have started topical COVIDs as well. And we have seen not only the good high play rate, but also the way the users are consume the content is pretty high on the smart speakers than the smartphone, right? I mean, that explains again, like what Sapna has mentioned, the device type consumption is going to evolve a lot in the recent days. And when we look at like languages apart from English, then we have seen a great engagement on the Indic languages as well. Like for example, we have like independent sites like NBT Gold talks about Hindi podcast. And we also have Bengali podcasts. These are like standalone podcast websites, and it's all about topical briefs, event-related podcasts that we are creating. And we have seen like 4x, 5x engagement from the users. Like Sapna mentioned, the next 1 billion new users that are coming to the internet are from voice, and we strongly believe it. And in fact, we are actually seeing the entire scenario on our properties at Times Internet. And there is a demand there, and like we started investing in technology, understanding the user content and delivering the content as per the user needs, and make sure it is productized to make it a finest product. I'm sure that users will love your product and keep engaging with you. I mean, that's how we've been doing it at Times, in fact.
Great, Rudra. I'm exposed to a certain piece of content on your platform. It's great. I must say that I'm pretty much hooked onto that as well. So while again, to Arvind, I think this question is towards you. Basically, I always feel that the consumer is actually far ahead of how brands and marketers are actually adopting to voice. They have adopted to this technology far easily than how brands have started using that. What do you think the barriers or the challenges that brands face? That's one, in terms of how to actually get this voice in the overall ecosystem and voice ecosystem in the marketing mix, and what should be brands doing more to actually build that into the overall mix?
So that's a great question, Gopa. I think by nature, the way voice has evolved it's more consumer-led than brand-led, right? As many solutions go, and hence because of that, the ecosystem for brands is rather more limited as compared to the ecosystem for consumer-led solutions. That's how I would say most marketers would perceive it for now. So while at the same time, it's very clear that voice is going to be the primary UI in the years to come, which means that brands and marketers have to overinvest on voice. So what's needed is solutioning for marketers. What role can voice play in the current ecosystem, right? And that solutioning is very important. And the solutioning is part content, part technology. And it will be very interesting to see how these various elements of technology and content come together from a solution perspective for marketers. Because there are many questions from marketing perspective, right? Do we have to re-engineer the consumer flows? And it's because the trap is we treat voice as more as a set of tactical solutions, right? But you need to have a voice strategy to be meaningful and to have a real impact on the business, right? So in sum, it's about the ecosystem coming together, providing solutions for marketers asking the right questions, so that between the content and the technology, the right solution is there for the marketers to implement.
Right, Arvind. Sri, if you would want to actually chime in terms of saying what do you think are the challenges, and you may be privy to when brands approach you in terms of what are the challenges that they see, and what do you think that we should be doing as a ecosystem to actually push this further, the cause of voice and generally, because as I said, consumer is actually adopting, but there's definitely a gap where brands are actually actively taking this case up.
Right. Gopa, I spent years in advertising, publicists, etc. The first thing marketers say is logo bada karo. We have heard this 400 times. This is the joke of our life, right? When you take away the visual cues from the identity of your brand, now how do you create it, right? Let's say in a physical world, SBI is different from HSBC, which is different from HDFC. But if they all sound the same, how can a brand differentiate is the number one question most marketers have. The solution does not lie in creating a different identity for the brand, but in creating a different persona, right? Understanding the use case, the context, the temporal setting, what is the end consumer asking for. Tech is all there. Like, for example, you can create an entire assistant experience in your brand ambassador's voice. Let's say Amitabh Bachchan is your brand ambassador. The entire experience can be built in that, right? So all the tech is available, but most are still discovering it. So I would say, where Sapna said the ecosystem has to grow, there is a lot to be done. So that is super crucial, and we are doing it right now as this webinar itself, right? So understanding the capability or the potency of what voice brings to table, that itself is very nascent, but there are a lot of brands adopting to it, and as and when more use cases start coming out, we will see a thorough fit or the right fit for brands to be in the voice space.
Rudra, you have any thoughts on this in terms of how to actually overcome those challenges, and what to actually what should we be doing more to actually build this ecosystem further?
Yeah, I think even when we started, when we believed like voice is the future, right? Even we have the same questions that what is going to be the user metric, how the conversion rate going to be, and what is that I'm end up achieving it. And when we have the thoughts, but honestly, I think we went ahead and invested in technology to understand that, like, be it as a search API, be it an assistant or Alexa, all the platforms that we went ahead and invested on it. And then, like, as we invest more and we understand the kind of engagement that users are asking and the kind of content that users are playing, and it's more about like, how do I build this entire ecosystem in such a way that we're gonna acquire this all voice-based users, which is not there in the system today, and how do we acquire them with these all inputs. And I think the challenge most of the people will see always is that the investment on the tech and content per se. That is where they always have to more worry about. But I think Times Internet is a good example where we have successfully did that, and we have even done a marketing around it, and we have seen a great success there as well. And I mean, I can share my screen and I can show you some of the creatives that we have did, where when we worked with Google assistant team, and we co-market the entire podcast that we have done. And during that time frame, we have actually acquired a lot of users, and also we have seen the brand rate has gone by 2x, and we have increased our brand ratios by 2x. And not just that, we have also seen the assistant usage for 18 plus users has uplifted by 12%. That itself is a great outcome that we have seen when we thought about it. Like, we know that voice is the future, but how do we do it? But once we start implementing all of these, then we have seen the great results out of it, right? I think that that's a good case study. If anyone wants to look at it, I think go and check out like how Times is doing. I'm sure this is like where you're going to acquire a lot of users. And while I know that you don't have a metric on table on the day one, but I'm sure you'll see that, okay, this is the fantastic case study I've taken at home, is what you feel at the end of the day.
Definitely, the metric system as digital has evolved again is always a question. But I think if you see good engagement happening, I think that itself is a good win. It's great that you touched upon both tech and the content aspect of it. I would want to actually again touch base or hear your thoughts, you Rudra first and then Sri. In terms of, I always have faced this question when we are actually approaching clients or when clients do approach us in terms of how to actually implement voice-led solution. What is the tech behind it in terms of, they always, everybody feels it's very complicated and lots of infra readiness is required. Do you think it is, if that is how it is, how we can actually simplify so that more and more adoption can happen? Or is it that complicated anyhow, basically? So,
I don't see it's a complication. I mean, it's all about like how you partner with the platforms like Google or like agencies like Argrea, like what Sri is talking about, and actually works for us like in two formats, right? What works well for the users, and how do we build these experiences? I mean, we've been working on it on technology and also investing a lot, but I think the simplest one till date was building on text to speech, and this is something we have built in on the one of the aggregator app called NewsPoint. We have seen like tremendous engagement from the users the moment we just started implementing that. If you ask me what is the step one for getting into voice, is just believing that voice is for now, and every product around you will change according to it. I mean, that's what my take is, and I don't see it as like a challenge, high investment. No, it is not for now, it's a future. No, it's actually now. We're already late in this market. I think we should get into that, invest more.
Sri, your thoughts on this? Basically, again, is it that complicated? Can you hear me, Sri? I think we will come back to Sri after the question. Till the time, I think Sri is facing some connection issues. Arvind, basically, again, while the tech aspect of it is actually looked in, but McDonald's has always been pretty heavy on localization as well. Do you feel that localization is the way to go in terms of how expanding? While again, all of these case studies and discussions that that has preceded has talked about Hindi and English being a very adopting thing for the voice scenario. But do you think localization is the way to go as we move forward?
Most definitely, Gopa. McDonald's by nature is a democratic brand, and we focus on penetration. And voice by nature, what makes it the next big thing out there is its democratic nature and the fact that it's so amenable to vernacular solutions, which is already happening right now. Right, it's not a futuristic thing; it's already there right now. So I think, and also the vernacular content industry itself is exploding. And providing more and more solutions for marketers like McDonald's to explore customized content depending on situation. So yes, vernacular will be a very big driver. Brands, and we have started to use a lot of vernacular content to kind of deepen the penetration across each cities that we are in. So definitely vernacular and voice will be a very key strategy, combined strategy in that sense for McDonald's.
Rudra, are you seeing a pattern there in terms of why and how to actually build for that? Because again, I have faced challenges when we have actually reached out to figure out in terms of, while Hindi and English is relatively easy, but different dialects require different kind of a development altogether. Is that now fully robust, and are we ready to actually scale that across Indian languages and dialects in that sense?
Yeah, I think with the kind of dialects we have, it's everyday learning for us, and we've also been learning a lot on the day we started, and we've been understanding a different voices, right? For example, Sapna presented Google Assistant is seeing 6 different voices, right? I mean, it's even like a 10x of what it is in the languages. While the system is not 100% ready, but I think we are pretty much there in terms of solving at least the Hindi. Otherwise, we will not be the second biggest language in the global at Google Assistant, right? I'm sure we are there. But I think for me, it's all about understand, learn what went wrong and go back and implement it. And in that aspect, we haven't seen a big challenge at all. Rather, we're actually seeing good insights from the user that as every time when we train the engine, we're actually seeing the better results that are coming out from that. In that way, I think it's pretty much, it's all about like how you build it and how do you do that.
Right. Is Sri back?
Yes.
Yes, Sri. So sorry, when you actually dropped off, basically just wanted to have your views on the tech ecosystem generally in terms of how to get into voice. Is it that complicated, basically, and how we can actually simplify that, if at all, if it is complicated in that sense?
Right. So, Gopa, if you were to draw a parallel to how mobile ecosystem, let's say Android was about 7-8 years ago, it's same as voice today, right? We have more than 3 million apps on Android today. And Alexa last year said they have more than 20,000 developers in India. So the tech part is really easy, right? There is what is called as blueprints, ready text, ready templates, easy programming. In fact, programming has become a lot more easier than what it was 10 years ago to build today, right? Of course, with complex use cases, let's say if you're talking about banking or starting a car, something we did, it might take a few months to get there because of security concerns. You need to be super sure of everything, but otherwise it's fairly easy, especially if you're building something that is very fun and engaging for consumers to reach them. It's not difficult at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And again, Rudra, you talked about content metrics as well. While tech is one thing, how to actually build content for voice as well. And is there any steps to actually look at in terms of if somebody is actually coming in? Is there content metrics that we can talk about? Or is how we can actually, again, build for that?
Yeah, I think content is king no matter in which form, right? So Times Group is a content powerhouse where like we have like a branch like Times of India, Economic Times, and like about Times Now, Zoom, and we have like Indic 8 languages. Focusing on the new trends and media consumption is the text, video, and audio formats. The growing user habit of listening and thus the need of the good audio content is evident now, and we have focused the strategy on audio beyond the text and video formats. Let me share you some metrics like on the content impact. Like for example, like I said earlier, like Times of India, we have crossed more than 2 million podcast streams in 30 days without any promotional activities, just by understanding what exactly user is looking for and give the content format to that. And here our play rate is about more than 90%, which itself explains that how user is engaging a lot on that. And while like very interesting learning that we also did, like while TOI consumed largely on the speakers and the smartphones, on Economic Times, we saw about 57% to 60% of the users are listening podcast on their desktop devices, clearly indicating the voice-based content is consumed no matter what the platform is, right? So now we went back and look at the strategy about the searches that they're going to use on the desktop, on the mobile, what kind of stuff, what is it happening there. So we just went ahead and analyzed what's happening with the user content and start working backwards. I mean, that's exactly what we did during COVID as well, where all our topical content that created specific to COVID on TOI, Times Now, all the platforms, including languages, we have seen outstanding results. We have seen a surge in growth on the smart speaker usage as well, like I mentioned earlier, which is about 45%. And also, there are some insights we are taking up, like, for example, dashboards like Actions Console for Google Assistant or like Podcast Manager for the narrative news on the podcast. We're constantly gaining insights into the evolving habits of podcast listeners so we can better understand our audience and reach them accordingly. I mean, that's exactly how we plan and we understand and we did it. For example, one of the news podcasts we have did, when the time we launched, we have seen only like 65 to 70% play rate only. We realized that something is off. How do we go back and work backwards to it? And how do we, like, by optimizing the content, by giving the right content formats, we're actually gained the success rate, the play rate to 90%. I mean, that itself tells us like how you read the data and how do you go back and fix on it? I mean, all I say is the best is yet to come. Watch out like how we do it in the space in the coming days. But the pattern that we follow is like know the trend, create the content, review the data, plan it, and check out the results, and just repeat the game. That's how we are doing it.
Interesting. I think it's all about content, definitely, and I think you guys are doing a great job on that front. So again, when we're talking about these use cases, would you actually, again, Sri, would you be interested in talking about some of the use cases that you've been working with? What have been success in terms of, and how you have figured out, or how you got the responses generally as well? And I believe have a shared case study between Rudra and you as well. So all yours.
Thanks, Gopal. I'll just put my screen on for it's a quick case study. We are a voice agency. So this is a use case that we built for Ghana Antakshari. First, let me show how it works. It's a 30-second promo video. After that, I can talk on how we built it.
Okay, Google, play Ghana Antakshari.
Welcome to Ghana Antakshari. Let me sing a song with the letter A. Now you have to sing with the letter R.
India's most loved musical game is back with a twist. Play Ghana Antakshari with Google Assistant.
Now, this requires incredible amount of AI, which recognizes the song as you sing. It transliterates if you're saying kuch kuch hota hai, it understands what you're saying. It takes the words and also checks if you're singing a real song or making stuff up, and then goes quickly to Ghana, picks up a song that ends or starts from the last word that you said and plays it, and then you keep on repeating it, right? So it's a great example of using the voice assistant in Indian language along with a robust content strategy. So which of course only Ghana could have made this possible, because all this music is licensed content. And so Ghana played to their biggest strength. They have lots of music and they have voice assistant. Now how can you put this two and two together, right? So that was we had a great opportunity working and learning and real fun. My next use case is completely different. How we built a connected car for Honda. But before that, Rudra, any comments on this?
No, man, this is fantastic. This is one of the highest experienced, I mean, say like the best experienced AOG that we have in the country. I can proudly say that. Like I said earlier, right, the day we launched and today we have seen 10x growth in our user engagement here, and it's a fantastic thing.
Yes, and there is a lot of features coming on to that as well. So stay tuned. Okay, here's the next use case, which is incredibly simple to look. This is.
Alexa, ask Honda to turn on the car racing.
All new Honda City, India's first connected car with Alexa remote capability. Book now.
Now, if you're wondering who's going to start their car with their voice, it's not just that. There is more than 62 different features that you could do while you're sitting in your couch. You could ask your Alexa to perform, right? It could be service booking, it could be checking the engine health, or if somebody like a teenager is driving in your home, you could even check if they're wearing the seat belt, and a lot of other things, right? So now this requires highest order of security and privacy concerns, because when I say Alexa start my car, it should start my car, not my neighbor's car, not my cousin's car, not anyone else's car. And also when the car is in motion, it has to drop down on a lot of functionalities, which is safety, which might distract the driver. Now, there's a bunch of things that goes on here, but the convenience of voice here is paramount, incredible. And once again, we were super fortunate to have built this. If anyone has any questions on this, please put this in chat and an answer. So Gopa, I think these two use cases shows extreme. One is incredibly high amount of tech, and other one, Antakshari, is incredible amount of fun. Both uses pretty much the same tech, but the use cases are different.
Great. I think both are pretty much opposite of what we thought about generally, but equally strong pieces basically in terms of how you are using voice to actually drive that. Since I think we are coming to an end for our stipulated time, just closing comments in terms of how do you see the next phase of voice evolution in India? And again, closing comments from both of you, and how do you see that evolving and what's the next phase?
I say that people are already there, audience have already adopted it, brands are getting there quickly, so that's a huge business opportunity for everyone. And also even people will start learning to use voice very differently. Let's say transaction level stuff, pay my current bill, pay my phone bill, those kind of small transactions, typically how we started, let's say with free charge 10 years ago, and then eventually we moved up to a complete e-commerce, booking everything online, right? So people will also start using it more. That will give more reasons for brands to be there. The classic question of ROI, that will be solved. And with more content, more audio content being created, there will be a lot more content driven use cases, people listening on the voice assistant devices. This is what Shams highlight as well. We might reduce the screen time, whether it is children or adult. We might listen to content while we are doing something else, right? From driving to cooking to meditating to trying to relax. So that's my bet on voice.
Great. Rudra, your 2 bits.
I think next 1 billion users are waiting for it. All we have to do is enable your products. For me, I think while technology part is a good investment, also focus on the content on English and different languages across the categories. I think most of the data has already been present by Sham and Sapna as well. And focus more on all technology devices that we have, like smart speakers, feature phones, smartphones, and Alexa devices and all of that. And of course, all content types as well, not just a news podcast, but also look at topical that is important for us to focus on. I think all Indic users are now moving on the voice, which will continue to demand more content as well. I foresee the growth will largely come from all these markets, especially on the smart speakers. I think that is something where we need to focus a lot on it.
Great. So I think we are almost at the end of our time. So thank you. Thank you, Sri. Thank you, Arvind, for great insights on how we can build for voice. And thank you for your time. Over to Monica.
Thank you, Gopa, and thank you all the panelists. I think the closing remarks helped sum it up pretty well. And in the interest of time, it's going to save us the time to recap it. But a quick fun fact, it takes us 40 words to text, but in the same time, we can speak 150 words. So you could, in the time you can text for 40 words, you can speak 150 words. So you can see the remarkable potential it can offer. Of course, between all of you, you'll have spoken about the ubiquity factor of voice, the fact that it will need an ecosystem. So like we say, it needs a village to raise, to raise a product. And in this case, the product is voice. So I think we need to enable that village and we need to enable that ecosystem so we can harness its true potential. With that, I'm going to say a big thank you to all of you for enabling learnings and rich insights. Thank you, Gopa, for moderating this session for us. So as we bring the webinar to a close, we'd like to just we'd like to do a quick recap of our upcoming webinars. Every Friday, we have the playbook, so kindly make time to attend it. The Great Debate, which is a global webinar, and the MMC series, which we're starting every Thursday, starting next Thursday at 12:30 IST. So do remain connected with us. You can follow us on our social media handles, subscribe to our newsletters to stay updated more on voice and various other initiatives being taken by MMA India. So stay tuned to learn more about voice and audio as we continue our journey to shape the future. Thank you, and I have a lovely day ahead.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Monica. Pleasure.